You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Forget the lies, the money. We're in this together and through it all. They said that nothing's forever, and they refuse to see the change in me. Why won't they wake up? Come on, come on, come on. Let's get it out to the music. Play that fucking music. Live through my music, yeah.
Welcome to the 6th of October 1997 and welcome back to Reliving the War. We've got another good one this week as the WWF continue to seriously fight back against the WCW onslaught. It's the night after Badd Blood and what a main event fans were treated to at that show. Check out my video as soon as possible because Big Vinnie Mac will strike it down, it's just a matter of time. Raw comes live tonight from Kansas City, Missouri, while Nitro's live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And if you're sitting comfortably and you're good to go, let's get started with episode 102. Vince McMahon stands in the ring as the roster stands at the entranceway. McMahon announces on Raw that Brian Pillman was found dead in his hotel room yesterday, and the tragic news has shocked everyone in the World Wrestling Federation. The company give Brian a 10-bell salute with the Hart Foundation standing in front of the other wrestlers. The Hart stand by a little longer after the 10 bells, and the screen then fades to black, moving into Raw's opening video. On Nitro, WCW displayed this message on the screen right at the start of the broadcast. There's a bit more later on though as Vince McMahon interviews Brian's widow just 24 hours after his passing. Gonna get this out of the way now, I'm not gonna discuss Melanie Pillman in detail later on. I know Dark Side of the Ring went in depth with all this from a moral and financial standpoint, but I'm just here to talk about Raw and Nitro shows. Talking about Melanie and Vince in depth would take up another extra 20 minutes and it's not something I really want to talk about either. I will say this though, I don't think the interview was a good idea. We'll look at it a bit later on. Shawn Michaels and Triple H cut a promo on Raw while Hulk Hogan has a few things to say on Nitro. We also have Jeff Jarrett versus Booker T. Hollywood says everyone knows when you're NWO for life. And something else that's for life is Hollywood coming out week after week putting the NWO title on the line and Sting being too afraid to face Hogan. Hogan heard that Roddy Piper's on his way to the arena. Bischoff thinks this is hilarious, by the way. And Hogan says when Piper arrives, the Hulkster's gonna be waiting. Hogan plans on reading the Commissioner the Riot Act, so we can expect another promo a little later on. The commentators announce a Randy Savage versus Chris Benoit match for tonight's main event, and then Jeff Jarrett makes his entrance. We've got Jarrett taking on Booker T. It's good that WCW let Booker continue to wrestle on Nitro in singles competition. Stevie Ray's still out with that Achilles tendon injury, so Booker got a chance to show what he could do on his own, and it was definitely the right call. Double J tries to showboat a little after performing a hip toss, but Booker's having none of it. Booker performs a hip toss of his own and he dodges a Double J dropkick attempt. Booker shows Jarrett how it should be done and Double J takes a break on the outside. Jarrett grabs Booker's foot on the outside and Jeff takes control of the match, doing a bit more showboating after delivering a leapfrog guillotine. The crowd chants Jarrett sucks as Jeff continues to lead the match, but they lose their minds when Booker performs a spinneroonie, followed by his jumping sidekick. Booker was such a smooth performer. When we come back from break, Jarrett performs a top rope crossbody. Jeff then performs that dropkick he missed earlier on. Booker comes back with a running forearm and Double J's now in trouble after taking a scissors kick. Jeff rolls out of the ring and he tries to find some comfort in Deborah, but Big Steve McMichael runs down. Deborah smacks Mongo across the face and Mongo takes it out on Double J. All this leads to Booker rolling up Jarrett and scoring the win. The crowd loved the opening match. Let's see if WCW can keep up the momentum. This is a long HBK and Triple H promo, but it's a good one and it's a memorable one. Shawn wants to give Michael Cole his official welcome to the WWF from the Click. Michael gets wedgied so bad that he almost splits in 3 parts, while HBK says that's gonna leave a mark. I'm sure it did. Shawn says the WWF's dreams of ending the Heartbreak Kid didn't work. HBK's here, The Undertaker is not. HBK says he proved to the world what he's been saying for 10 years in the World Wrestling Federation. Shawn Michaels is simply the very best sports entertainer in the world, and Badd Blood was the proof. Michaels announces he's now the icon of the World Wrestling Federation. He says the word icon's being thrown around quite a lot in wrestling today as Michael Cole gets thrown around by Chyna and Hunter. HBK says he's in a class of his own. He's not one of those fossils. He's the icon that can still go. Hunter asks Shawn who's the man, who's the showstopper, who's the main event. Michaels answers that it's HBK, and Shawn then says the most powerful force in the world today is the Clique. Shawn then asks for footage of Badd Blood to get played on the big screen, but instead of last night's match, we see footage of the Clique's curtain call. HBK and Triple H set this up. They act surprised when the footage airs and they tell fans what's going on. HBK, Triple H, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash breaking kayfabe. Shawn lets fans know that Hunter was a bad guy and this shouldn't have happened, and Vince McMahon orders for the footage to stop from his headset. Shawn makes fun of Vince, saying this was supposed to be a big day for McMahon because he sold out Madison Square Garden for the first time in a long time. HBK says this still must be a sensitive subject for McMahon, and he wonders if this made Vince's dad roll in his grave. Did the Clique make an ass out of McMahon by shitting all over tradition? Shawn says Vince was an ass long before HBK made one of him, so he shouldn't worry. Vince tells the production guys to cut away for a commercial break. We come back and the boys are still at ringside, saying again that the Clique is the most powerful force in all of pro wrestling. The Hart Foundation then show up, and this makes Shawn and Hunter mock Vince even further, saying he ordered the Hart's music to play in order to save his own ass. Bret says this is what it's came down to, the fans chanting USA while Shawn runs around the ring, a man who has no respect for anybody. Bret continues on.
Shawn Michaels. Yes, Bret Hart.
Bret says Shawn's a disgrace to pro wrestling. The crowd pops when Bret calls Shawn the lowest form of scum he's ever come across, and the Hitman tells the audience to spare him their cheers. And then Bret says that Shawn Michaels is nothing but a degenerate. Bret then says we all know what the H stands for in HBK, and we all know what HHH stands for.
You're nothing but a homo, and that guy there in the green shirt is nothing but a homo. Oh, I'm no queer.
Bret says Shawn barebacked his way to all those pay-per-view main events recently, but the Hitman makes more money than HBK, Triple H and Chyna combined. There's that money issue again that we talked about earlier in the year. Bret says it's all about the WWF title and Shawn will never be the showstopper until he takes the championship away from the Hitman. Bret says he ran Shawn's other boyfriends, Razor and Diesel, out of the WWF and he's got no problem doing it again. So he wants to start tonight and he wants to start with Triple H. Bret challenges Hunter to step into the ring with the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. And Shawn says, okay, but do you want him to wrestle you? Fucking funny stuff, and it goes right over Bret's head. Still, Bret saves it and the crowd pops when he says he's gonna bide his time with the Heartbreak Kid, and he promises to kick Shawn's scrawny ass in Montreal. Immediately after Bret leaves, Shawn says he has 2 words for the Hitman: suck it. Bret may earn more money, but he doesn't have more money. He has to work week after week to get paid, and the only reason he's in the main event at the next pay-per-view is because he's wrestling the Heartbreak Kid. Bret did not destroy the Clique. Bret shouldn't confuse expansion with destruction. The Clique own the wrestling business, and at Survivor Series, the Clique and HBK are going to own the Hitman. Really fascinating stuff here. This whole implied thing with Shawn, Hunter and the Wolfpack still working together to take over wrestling was actually a smart move, but it's a move that could also confuse casual fans. But anyone who watched both shows would know exactly what Shawn was talking about. We also learned here that Shawn and Bret's rivalry was still pretty personal. A good promo to kick off Raw and one you should check out. This isn't the only time performers on WCW get mentioned on Raw tonight. It feels like the WWF take the gloves off on this episode of Raw and the Monday Night War gets seriously heated up.
Shawn Michaels has the Clique, Alex Wright has the dick.
Oh, big Bratwurst.
We've got Alex Wright versus Billy Kidman on Nitro. On Raw, the Godwinns take on the Headbangers in a lumberjack match. Alex laughs after pushing Kidman during a clean break in the corner. Kidman then gets baited in with a good old smack across the face. Kidman gets headbutted in the ribcage and Wright tosses his opponent out of the ring. Kidman then notices Raven and Perry Saturn sitting at ringside. Schiavone has no idea who Saturn is, and Mike Tenay explains that he and Raven had a relationship back in another wrestling organisation. Kidman starts getting the better of Wright and we see a plancha. We then cut away to the backstage area where Mongo and Deborah continue to argue, and look at this. Deborah smacks Mongo, and the first thing Mongo thinks about is kicking the shit out of Jeff Jarrett. I don't know why, but I loved Mongo's reaction here. Steve says he knows how to solve this. He wants a match with Jarrett at Halloween Havoc. Yep, that sorts everything. The cameras cut away before we hear any more, but there will be a stipulation added to that match. Back in the ring, we see the Alex Wright top rope foot stomp. Alex delivers a suplex and a clothesline, but the crowd's distracted by something going on in the audience. Kidman counters the German suplex with a jawbreaker as Raven and Saturn continue watching the match. And then we see what everyone in the audience was distracted by, two fans walking around dressed up as Ric Flair and Randy Savage. Kidman continues to fight back with a springboard bulldog. He then misses a 450 splash, and after a little Saturday Night Fever, Alex Wright defeats Billy Kidman with the German suplex. Over on Raw, this tag match is not for the tag team titles, and I'm not sure why they needed lumberjacks for this one, but anyway, the Godwinns won the belts at Badd Blood, and now the Hog Farmer era is upon us. The crowd chants for the Legion of Doom as Mosh and Thrasher do a little crowd surfing before the opening bell. Thrasher and Henry were the first to fall out of the ring, and the lumberjacks did their job by throwing the boys back in. I was about to say that Mosh was next to get thrown over to the heel side, but there were bad guys on the opposite side too. And yeah, you know how this one's gonna end. You're just waiting to see what kicks off the inevitable brawl. The lumberjacks didn't do anything else really until the end of the match. Henry was about to use his slot bucket, and that was the Legion of Doom's cue to run in and end the match. A big old fight breaks out with all the lumberjacks getting involved. The DOA, the Truth Commission, the New Blackjacks, the Bariquas, Rockabilly. When the ring clears, Mosh is able to pin Phineas, and there you go. The new tag champs just got pinned one night after winning the belts. Ernest Miller vs Mortis takes place on Nitro, while Miguel Perez Jr. battles the returning Marc Mero. Mero comes to the ring with Sable. He's got a new look inspired by his days as an amateur boxer, and he's got some great new theme music too. This, as we'll soon find out, is marvellous Marc Mero, and for my money, it's a vast improvement over the Wildman, although Mero's days of winning championships were now over. Mero starts it off with body shots and he performs a knee lift. Miguel goes down after a snap mare, Mero drops an elbow, and Mero brings it to the corner where he fires off rights and lefts. Miguel gets a little payback with a clothesline followed by a body slam, but Mero was on form tonight. Marc shows off his new finisher, the TKO, a fireman's carry into a cutter, and the move looked tremendous. Mero wins via pinfall, and I really thought at the time that Mero was on the right path here. It's a gimmick change that I thought could work, and Mero toning down the theatrics allowed him to put more focus on his abilities in the ring. We'll see how this plays out, but it's a good reintroduction for Marc Mero here, and that theme music of his was an absolute banger too. Following the match, Jim Cornette says a few words, and my, here's where the WWF take those gloves off. This isn't the first Cornette commentary promo, by the way. He was ranting on WWF's web show Bite This, and the feedback he got doing those rants were tremendous. So the WWF decided to put Cornette in front of a camera on Raw and let him shoot, and boy does he shoot. Jim praises WCW's Arn Anderson, and he calls Ric Flair one of the greatest of all time, while also showing respect to Mick Foley. He calls these guys real wrestlers, but guys like the NWO, they're comparable to a group of guys playing in a treehouse. Cornette says the World Wrestling Federation made Kevin Nash into a star, and Nash thanked the World Wrestling Federation by lying about staying in New York before jumping over to Atlanta. Cornette also says Nash is the biggest no talent in the business, and he's only got 6 moves. Cornette says Scott Hall's a good wrestler, the best of the bunch, but he was offered big money too after not being able to put asses into seats for 10 years, and he also jumped ship. And as for Six, he only got a job in WCW because his friends like to laugh at him when he's drunk and when he vomits on himself. Cornette calls Eric Bischoff a mark. He's a fan who spends Ted Turner's money so he can hang around studly guys, hoping some of their coolness rubs off on him. He He spends money so he can prove he's got the biggest Johnson, and that's the sole reason why the NWO guys are currently employed. Cornette wants fans to recognise Arn Anderson, Ric Flair and Cactus Jack, guys who bust their ass and guys who have talent. Fans shouldn't be cheering for a bunch of NWO guys who get their spots by sucking up to the boss. Absolutely unreal at the time to hear someone talk about the competition this candidly on TV. This isn't the old nudge nudge wink wink shit we'd seen in the past. This was clear as day and it was so fucking good too. This isn't the last time we'll hear from Cornette in this fashion either. On Nitro, Ernest Miller took on Mortis, and it feels like this whole blood runs cold thing has truly run its course. It's crystal clear that nobody knew how to wrap this thing up, and even though they tried moving Mortis and Wrath onto different opponents, they still come back to this without much clue about what to do next. I was thinking about how much Ernest Miller had improved at the beginning of this match, but he jumped way too early during a top rope famouser, and yeah, not good at all. Mortis hits a nice Death Valley driver before Miller gets thrown out of the ring. Vandenberg is right there to do some damage, but a failed top rope splash brings Miller back into the match. The Cat gets the win here with an awesome springboard kick that makes the crowd jump from their seats. The Cat chases Vandenberg back up the ramp after winning the bout, and yeah, it's time to move on, lads. Scott Hall vs Hector Garza takes place next on Nitro, while Reliving the War favourites Davey Boy Smith and Rocky Maivia battle it out on Raw. The Nation and the Hart Foundation stick around for this matchup, so you know what's going to happen here either during or after the match. At the initial lockup, Jerry Lawler talks about how the Hart Foundation are great for still wrestling tonight even after the Brian Pillman news, and McMahon cuts Jerry off by saying let's not go there. Davey gets cheered when he performs a clothesline followed by a few arm drags. Rock takes a timeout and Davey mocks the Nation by doing the Nation salute. Rock gets back in the ring, we see a wrist lock from Maivia, but Bulldog fires back with a poke to the eye when Rock goes for a leapfrog. Davey follows this up with another arm drag, and he applies an arm bar, the swine. Rock replies with a knee to the midsection as Owen and Brett look on from the outside. Davey then gets choked in the corner, and I'm not sure because I haven't been watching Shotgun episodes recently, but that might very well be the first ever People's Elbow, albeit the beta test version. Davey gets right back up and he delivers the vertical suplex. He lays in a few forearms, he's all fired up, but a boot to the face puts Davey down and Rock tries to steal a victory. Davey kicks out, we see the running power slam, and I don't know why I was surprised when Davey won cleanly here, but I was. A straight, no-nonsense, chin-lock-free victory for our main man. Farouk decides he won't stand for this, so he begins whipping Hart Foundation members with his belt. A fight breaks out between the Nation and the Hart Foundation, with Farouk specifically aiming for Owen Hart after what happened at Badd Blood. The Harts are going up against more heels here, arguably watering down their heat further, as evidenced by fans cheering for Davey Boy Smith during this very matchup. Scott Hall's injured, he's wrapped up and he's in pain when he makes his entrance. He and Six get in the ring and Scott says Kevin Nash is also injured so bad that he can't show up to Nitro. Mr. Hall goes on to explain what happened. This injury he's got, this very serious injury, came about when he visited Nash's home last week. The Outsiders sat down to watch some old wrestling tapes and they began watching Larry Zbyszko matches. Scott laughed so hard at the matches that he threw his back out and Nash fell off his stool and hurt his knee. Well played, sir. Well played. Scott says Lex Luger's sitting at home while the NWO once again carried the load. If he has to crawl to Halloween Havoc to face the total package and Luger's hand-picked referee, Hall will do just that. Luger's going down. Down where? Down here. So Scott wants a bit of revenge for Hector Garza beating him a few weeks back. Scott decides to throw his toothpick at referee Billy Silverman this time, and he then blindsides Hector with a forearm to the back of the head. Hall then performs the fallaway slam, he sails his back and ribs afterwards, and then Hall intimidates the ref by grabbing him by the throat. He stands in the corner and he blocks the referee from doing anything when Six runs in with a Bronco Buster. Schiavone says the referee is scared to disqualify Hall. Scott then hits the Outsider's edge, and the commentators say Larry Zbyszko won't be intimidated so easily at Halloween Havoc. As Scott gets his hand raised in victory, Waltman attacks Silverman from behind, and Scott Hall sprays a Z for Zbyszko on Billy's back. After the bout, the commentators talk about Goldberg and how this newcomer won't talk about his past even though he's been very impressive so far in WCW, and this is a good time to check if Goldberg had any matches since last week's Nitro, seeing as he doesn't perform in this week's episode. Yeah, so on the 1st of October he defeated Roadblock, but the match wasn't broadcasted until the 11th. That means the match happens on WCW Saturday Night later this week. Now, to avoid confusion, what I'll do here is only count victories once they've aired on TV, if they aired on TV. So while Goldberg's technically now 3-0, we won't say he's 3-0 until the match actually gets broadcasted, because if we count these victories early, then our heads will explode with matches being pre-recorded 2 and 3 months in advance, and trust me, it happens. For example, the match that actually makes him 4-0 happens after the Saturday night taping, but that match on WCW Main Event doesn't air until December. So right now, in our Reliving the War timeline, Goldberg is still 2-0. Steve Austin cuts a promo next on Raw while DDP takes on Disco Inferno on Nitro. The TV title is on the line. So Steve Austin has a few choices. He can produce a doctor's note tonight to say he can wrestle, he can sign a waiver absolving WWF of any liability should Austin hurt himself by stepping back in the ring, or his contract can get terminated and he's free to hit stunners anywhere but the WWF. Vince says he hopes Austin will make the right decision and Austin threatens to whip his ass. This, as expected, gets a great response from the crowd. McMahon wants to know why Austin helped Owen win the IC title last night, and Stone Cold said it's none of his business. And Vince gets a little angry. McMahon says if Austin wants to play hardball, then that's fine. Austin says he has no doctor's note while calling Vince a jackass. Vince has the waiver in his hand and he tells Stone Cold if he wants to end up in a wheelchair, then that's completely up to him, but the World Wrestling Federation won't be responsible for it. Stone Cold says he's the toughest SOB in the WWF, but he's not going to come out here and sign a waiver like the dumbest SOB in the WWF. Austin wants something in return. Stone Cold says he'll sign the papers if Vince McMahon can give him a match with Owen Hart as soon as possible, and Austin also wants a shot at the Intercontinental belt. Vince says Austin's got it, McMahon's happy to do it. He extends his hand, but Austin tells him to put it away or wipe his ass with it. Austin won't shake Vince's hand until he sees McMahon's name on the contract that'll make Stone Cold vs Owen Hart for the IC belt official. Farouk and the Nation appear on the Titantron and Farouk says Stone Cold isn't tough. What's tough is being brought up with hardships like having no food on the table, fighting your brother for a jacket so you can stay warm going to school, having to watch your siblings cry on Christmas morning because they didn't get that brand new bicycle while the other kids got to play on theirs. That's tough. Farouk says Austin's ass belongs to the Nation because Austin stuck his nose in their business. The IC title belongs to Farouk, and Stone Cold tells Farouk to shut up. Once the legalities are sorted out, Austin says he's coming after the Nation. It isn't a colour thing, it isn't a race thing, it's a Stone Cold kicking Farouk's ass thing, and that's the bottom line. Stone Cold then ends the promo and he goes to the outside of the ring. He grabs Jerry Lawler's crown and he punts it into the audience.
Disco fever, yeah, 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 yeah.
Diamond Dallas Page gets a shot at Disco Inferno's TV title on Nitro and Disco looks like he's ready to go. He surprises Page with an arm drag, but when Dallas instantly replies with a diamond cutter attempt, Disco runs out of the ring and he almost goes back to the locker room. Disco says he's too smart to get caught out with a diamond cutter, he is the TV champion after all. Disco delivers a hip toss and Dallas replies with a body slam. Disco also takes a swinging neck breaker and Disco again ends up on the outside. DDP goes over the top rope and Disco takes a crossbody. A loud DDP chant breaks out when both guys get back in the ring, but Disco silences the crowd with a clothesline to the back of the neck. The Inferno keeps the pressure on with his own swinging neck breaker, but it only gets a 2 count. The two then trade right hands and DDP wins, leading to Dallas pancaking Disco before signaling for the diamond cutter. Paige lifts Disco up for a fireman's carry diamond cutter, not unlike Marc Mero's TKO we saw earlier on, but then Macho Man runs down to cause a DQ finish. Randy gets Dallas out of the ring and Paige gets thrown into the ring steps. Savage then pulls up the protective mats on the outside. He goes to hit a pile driver, but Roddy Piper shows up to stop Savage. Savage pushes Piper. Piper spits on Savage. There's that spit again. And Randy takes a diamond cutter on the exposed floor. Piper gets DDP out of harm's way by bringing him through the audience. And the NWO come down a little too late. Savage has been hurt badly. The NWO are screaming for someone to come down and help, and the doctors show up with a stretcher and Miss Elizabeth. Hogan says Piper isn't getting out of the arena alive, while the commentators laugh at what just happened. The NWO are both concerned and furious at the same time, and Roddy Piper's gonna have to answer to Hulk Hogan next on Nitro. Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan cut a promo next on TNT. Owen Hart takes on Hawk on the USA Network. Hawk versus Owen feels a bit random. The IC title is on the line in this one. Owen says Austin tried to get him disqualified last night, but it backfired. Owen says he'll happily wrestle Stone Cold again. After all, he is the Intercontinental Champion. Owen doesn't fear Steve Austin. Hawk took the lead early on with a press slam followed by a neckbreaker. Hawk then ran into the ring post shoulder first, and this allowed Owen to perform an enziguri. We then see the Godwinns walking down to the ring as Owen lands a second rope elbow drop. Owen performs a gut-wrench suplex and Hawk replies with a clothesline. Owen hits a low blow and a DDT that Hawk no-sells, and then Phineas hits Hawk with the slop bucket. Still, Hawk kicks out of the follow-up pin, and Road Warrior Animal shows up to take out those dastardly Godwinns. Uncle Cletus jumps on the apron as Hawk rocks Owen with a clothesline, but Henry ends up whacking Hawk with Cletus's lucky horseshoe. Owen wins via pinfall, and yeah, no need to watch this one. On Nitro, Roddy Piper tries to prove a point by showing footage of Slamboree. The Hot Rod says he doesn't remember Hall being the last guy to destroy him on WCW, but he does remember this. Piper doesn't care if the outsiders are injured. Next week on Nitro, they're defending the tag team titles, and if they don't, they're going to get stripped of those tag team titles. Piper's got more. The DDP vs Savage match at Halloween Havoc, no disqualification. They can go all night long if they have to. Last man standing wins. Already, these announcements are better than last week's. Out comes Hollywood Hogan and Eric Bischoff, and the Hulkster stares a hole through the hot rod. Hogan says the icon crap stops here. Hulk wonders what Piper's thinking, walking around telling the NWO what to do. JJ Dillon doesn't call the shots, Piper doesn't call the shots, Eric Bischoff's the head honcho and Piper needs to remember that. Hogan says Piper could never be an icon because Hulk Hogan still exists, and the simple fact is, for the past 15 years, Piper stood in Hogan's shadow. Hulk says everyone's in the building because of Hollywood, and in the steel cage at Halloween Havoc, Hogan's gonna prove to Piper's wife and kids that Hogan's the only icon in professional wrestling. Hogan's gonna end Piper's career and he's gonna send Roddy home. The two shove each other, Bischoff attacks Piper's bad hip, and this allows Hogan to get the better of the commissioner. Piper gets wrecked here and even Eric Bischoff wants in on the action, only Piper ducks out of the way and Bischoff ends up kicking the Hulkster. The crowd pops when the Hot Rod attacks Bischoff and Roddy gets a few shots into Hogan. The NWO end up saving Hulk, and gotta say, this was one of Hogan's best promos for a long time. He came across as very serious and he didn't ham it up, but I'm still not looking forward to another Piper vs Hogan main event on pay-per-view. The Nitro girls come out for a dance next, and during the dance, Tony Schiavone announced a stipulation for the Double J vs Mongo match in Vegas. If Mongo wins, Deborah has to leave WCW. The Melanie Pillman interviews next on Raw. Over on Nitro, we have Ultimo Dragon vs Eddie Guerrero. Alright, so this Melanie Pillman interview, Vince says he knows this must be difficult for Melanie and he thanks her for joining the show tonight. McMahon says there's a lot of speculation about Brian's passing and he wants Melanie to share what she knows about Pillman's death. She says Brian had a problem with his heart, it was put under stress and Melanie doesn't know exactly why. Tests are inconclusive, but Brian died of a heart attack, that's all she knows. McMahon brings up pain medication and the fact Pillman took medication to help with his injuries, and McMahon wonders if Melanie has anything to say to other aspiring athletes who could potentially go down the same path as Brian Pillman. Melanie says not only was Brian dealing with the usual pain a pro wrestler goes through, but he was also dealing with the pain caused from his car accident back in 1996. Melanie then says all athletes, to a certain degree, experience a reliance on pain medicine, and she knew it was only a matter of time before this happened to someone. Unfortunately, it was her husband that it happened to. Melanie says it should be a wake-up call. It could be your husband, it could be you, and you don't want to leave behind a bunch of orphans like Brian did. McMahon wants to know if the children understand what happened to their dad. Melanie says little 4-year-old Brian doesn't understand. Their adopted child Brittany understands because she lost her biological mother, and again, I'm not going to get into all this. Check out Dark Side of the Ring. It continues to get, I don't know, it's just wrong when McMahon asks Melanie how she's going to support herself and her children. She says the WWF and the fans are seeing her through it, but beyond that, she has no idea. Melanie says she wants Brian remembered as one of the most compassionate and loving men ever and the best father in the world, and he loved, lived, and died for the wrestling business. McMahon wraps it up by saying Melanie has the company's condolences. The WWF then play a tribute video narrated by Jim Ross. This would have sufficed even though the WWF completely skip over Brian's work in WCW, but yeah, Pillman was awesome. How the WWF handled his passing though, it's bad. Even before learning the whole story, this still didn't feel right back in 1997. It was uncomfortable then and it's uncomfortable now. For me, this is one of the lowest points of the whole Monday Night War. Mike Tenay's series about Lucha Libre begins, and the first installment is all about Arena Mexico and the beginning of Mexican wrestling. Superstars like El Santo and Eddie Guerrero get mentioned as the pioneers, and we quickly move to the 80s and 90s, eras of the second generation Lucha stars. Tenay talks about promotions in Mexico, and do you ever wonder why Promo Azteca's logo is just like the New World Order's? Well, Promo Azteca was founded in 1995, but soon taken over by Konnan. For a period of time, an NWO group were in Promo Azteca consisting of Konnan, Damien, Halloween or Ciclope, Psychosis, and Villano 4 and Villano 5. So there you go, Psychosis and the Villanos were technically part of the NWO. The next installment is going to look at the importance of masks in Lucha Libre, and you know, it was good WCW were educating viewers on this stuff. I'm sure there's more detailed and better research media out there these days for those wanting to explore Lucha Libre, but this was still quite good. Ultimo Dragon then took on Eddie Guerrero back in the ring, and you know what to expect. I won't go in depth with this one because it's a match we've seen before, and I also think I've went in depth with more or less every single Dragon and Guerrero match so far in this series. But here's an Ultimo Dragon botch. Sorry, sometimes you just gotta show these. Here's an Ultimo Dragon chinlock immediately afterwards, so he definitely made up for his little slip up. Dragon performed a dive to the outside that looked like it had a lot of impact, and his released German suplex looked fantastic too. Dragon even locked in the Dragon Sleeper, but Eddie made it to the ropes. The match ends with Eddie performing a tornado DDT from the top rope, and he follows this up with a frog splash. He had quite some distance to travel here, but it's enough to win the match. Eddie Guerrero retains the Cruiserweight title on Monday Nitro. Because Randy Savage got taken out by DDP, Curt Hennig's going to step in for Savage. Curt Hennig vs Chris Benoit takes place next on Nitro, while Paul Bearer and Kane show up on Raw. The Hardy Boys were scheduled to take on the Truth Commission, but the lights go down in the arena and Paul Bearer walks to the ring with The Undertaker's little brother. This is Kane's first ever appearance on Raw. A double chokeslam sorts those Hardy Boys out, Matt gets launched out of the ring, and take a look at this.
Look at this! Look at this! Oh my God!
Paul says this is the fans' chance to laugh at the fat man, but the fans should be laughing at the Phenom. The proof has just arrived. Paul said he tried to get The Undertaker to take him back, but the dead man slapped him around. He called Paul a liar, he set fire to his face, but The Undertaker's little brother Kane has now arrived and Paul invites The Undertaker to have a good look. Paul says the world saw the look in The Undertaker's eyes when he came face to face with his brother, and the world also saw the look on The Undertaker's face. The Phenom knew this was his little brother. 20 years of suffering, 20 years of hiding, it's all over, and Paul has The Undertaker to thank for Kane's arrival. Bearer says this is The Undertaker's stop sign on his highway to eternity, and Paul says he and Kane will take every wrestler the WWF has until they reach The Undertaker. The destruction started tonight with the Hardy Boys. Paul says The Undertaker will remember the fire every time he closes his eyes, and Paul welcomes the dead man to his worst nightmare. I was going to do Kane's stock footage adventures again for this segment, but I thought it was too important to mess around with. But if you want to see the stock footage return, let me know in the comments. Strap yourselves in though and grab some extra toilet roll. Kane has arrived and he looks pretty damn intimidating too. This is Nitro's final match, and Curt Hennig again finds himself in the main event. Benoit and Hennig were supposed to wrestle on Saturday night, but Curt organised an ambush and Benoit got destroyed by a few NWO goons. Benoit's all fired up tonight and he wants to get some revenge for Slick Rick, so he attacks Hennig during the entrances. Curt fights back, but it does no good. A big chop launches Curt into the air and he bumps on the ring steps. The same thing happens in the ring, only this time Curt lands on the ropes. I'm just noticing this glue bag in the audience too. Look at those glasses. Check out the bump Curt takes after a front suplex on the top rope. My. The match goes to the outside where Curt's head gets drilled into the ring steps, and Benoit asks Hennig if he still wants to mess around with the Horsemen. Remember, the Horsemen, according to Ric Flair last week, are no more. Back in the ring, Benoit gets whipped in the corner. He gets a boot up and he climbs upstairs, but a dragon screw brings Chris right back down. Hennig then delivers 2 scissor stomps before dragging Chris to the ring post, and Benoit gets his knee whacked a few times. When we come back from commercial break, Benoit's fighting back, but Hennig isn't going to let Chris get away with it. Curt throws rights and lefts and he gets all fired up while calling Chris a son of a bitch. Hennig removes the turnbuckle pad, but it's Curt who ends up taking the bump chest first. Chris then hits a German suplex. Curt blocks Benoit from performing any more. Curt again gets launched into the corner, but he dodges the incoming attack and we see the perfect plex. Curt Hennig defeats Chris Benoit in the Nitro main event. The NWO launch an attack after the final bell, at least it wasn't before it. Chris is in trouble here as Buff, Conan and Vincent lay in the boots, but the roof comes off the arena when Nature Boy Ric Flair returns to Nitro. Rick dashes to the ring to save Benoit, but he's also focused on getting his hands on Curt. Curt runs away and Flair chases at full speed. Doug Dillinger gets knocked over when he tries to grab Rick, and Flair chases Hennig right out of the building. Nitro ends with a Ric Flair promo. Over on Raw, we've got Bret Hart versus Triple H. Hunter gets officially announced to the ring as Triple H here. Thought that was noteworthy. Jerry Lawler asks McMahon about Shawn's statement earlier about people confusing expansion with destruction, and Lawler tells McMahon he can't pretend like WCW doesn't exist. McMahon isn't keen on talking about it on air, but he does say maybe they exist because of the World Wrestling Federation. Bret's going full throttle from the get-go here. Trips gets punished in the corner before Bret delivers a suplex. Hunter then gets floored with a headbutt, and China looks on as Hunter gets whipped in the corner before taking a Russian leg sweep. Not the way Hunter wanted to start this match. Hunter tries to kick Bret away, but the Hitman stays on his opponent, and it's a rake in the eyes that brings Hunter into the match. McMahon's trying to rip Bret apart on commentary by talking about the Hitman's values and how he wants to be a role model. And JR says, who's to say Bret's values aren't right? Many fans in Canada certainly believe in what Bret says, and Jerry Lawler backs up Ross. It's quite the conversation the boys are having at the commentary desk. Bret comes back with a clothesline, and Vince won't fuck up. He's now saying HBK isn't being the bad influence on Hunter, it's maybe Hunter being the bad influence on HBK. Again, JR doesn't agree. JR thinks that Shawn Michaels is influencing a lot of people backstage, and he leaves it at that. Shawn then appears and he's telling the crowd to suck it on his way to the ring. You may think this is great and iconic, but here's a Bret Hart chinlock. Beat that, you degenerate. Bret releases the hold and Shawn's distraction allows Hunter to take advantage. Shawn, meanwhile, shoves the Canadian flag up his nose, and you can hear him say, "I love Canada," as he fucks around on the outside. Owen Hart and the Anvil show up just before commercial break, and we come back to Triple H dropping a knee on the WWF champ. Davey Boy Smith is also joined as Hart Foundation brethren. Bret gets suplexed, he takes an inverted atomic drop, Triple H pummels his opponent in the corner, and then he applies a sleeper. The crowd cheers when Bret counters with a back suplex, and it's interesting seeing the crowd cheer for the Hitman again. I don't think they were necessarily going all in with Bret, they just wanted Triple H to get his ass kicked. Hunter gets a boot up when Bret comes off the second rope and Hart takes a DDT. A back elbow stuns the champion, but Bret manages to kick Helmsley and then he goes for the sharpshooter. Bret locks it in and Chyna pushes the rope to help Triple H, and on the outside, Rick Rude shows up and he takes out Davey Boy Smith with his magical briefcase. The cameras don't catch this very well though. Chyna tries to attack Bret when the Hitman goes for the figure 4. She gets in a forearm, but Bret grabs her arm on the second attempt. The crowd again cheers as it looks like Bret's going to knock Chyna out, but Bret ends up taking sweet chin music. This results in Bret getting counted out and Triple H wins the bout. Raw ends with a dazed Bret Hart slowly getting to his feet while Triple H celebrates his big win on the rampway. Ric Flair comes back to the arena on Nitro and Mean Gene wants to get a few words. Rick takes the mic off Okerlund and he walks to the ring. The Nature Boy thanks the fans and he says this is reality. Flair says he's been racked, he's been locked in the Scorpion Deathlock, he's taken the leg drop, but he's still here much to the dismay of the NWO. Flair sends a message to Curt Hennig and Hulk Hogan. This isn't about politics because the companies wanted Flair gone before. It isn't about who's the best because arguably there's no one better than the Nature Boy. Curt Hennig high-fived the NWO after slamming the steel door on Flair's head. But Hennig isn't NWO for life, he's NWO for 3 more weeks because at Halloween Havoc, whether WCW books it or not, the Nature Boy's coming after the former Mr. Perfect. It's not about showing everyone who the better wrestler is, it's about Flair hurting Curt. And if there's anything left of Hulk Hogan after his steel cage match, Flair promises Hulk he's coming after him. Flair mentions NWA greats such as Dory Funk, Bruiser Brody, Jack Briscoe, Hardy Race and Dusty Rhodes, and Flair has faced them all. Hulk Hogan eventually will have the Nature Boy in his face, and there's nothing Hollywood can do about it. Raw wins this week's Reliving the War, and it was thanks to the Shawn and Hunter promo at the start, the excellent promo work once again by Steve Austin, and the main event. Hennig vs Benoit was good too, by the way, but Hennig's main evented the last 4 Nitro shows in a row, and it doesn't matter who you are, that's just too much. Flair's return promo was good too, and the fans loved it, but Raw was just so entertaining this week with only a few slip-ups. Raw finally takes the lead on our scoreboard with 45 points, Nitro's got 44, and we have 13 ties. In the TV ratings, Nitro wins this week with a 3.9, Raw scored a 3.0. Next week on Raw, Vince McMahon presents Steve Austin with a new contract. This team right here get themselves a new name, while the Legion of Doom get a shot at the tag team titles. On Nitro, Bill Goldberg's back in action, Rey Mysterio loses his mask, and in the main event we've got, oh my god, are you serious? This must have been in his contract or something, this is nuts. Join me next week guys, it should be another good one. Thanks for watching this week's episode of Reliving the War, and take care.